First of all, a big thank you to Chairman Durbin for responding to my request to hold a hearing on this issue of danger to law enforcement officers. I appreciate it very much. Attacks on police officers are rising across the country. We see news stories on a regular basis about ambush attacks and murder of law enforcement in Los Angeles, Philadelphia, and elsewhere. Even in my home state of Iowa, has not escaped this violence. Nationwide, 73 officers were killed in felonies last year, the highest number since the 9/11 attacks. That's a 59% increase over the previous year. 133 officers were shot in ambush-style attacks, an increase of 123% over the previous year. The most recent data shows that violent crime is rising across our country, but violence against police officers is even higher. This is a unique and a very critical problem, and this hearing recognizes that, and once again thanks Senator Durbin for bringing attention to this part of crime in the United States that doesn't get the attention it should. So I recognize one of my guests here today is Officer Zach Anderson. He was deputy in Grundy County last year when Sergeant Jim Smith of Iowa State Patrol was murdered in an ambush attack. He was with Sergeant Smith when the murder happened. I previously spoke in honor of Sergeant Smith's memory on the Senate floor. It breaks everybody's heart to hear stories like this come out of our state, but there's sadly many such stories around the country. Every death of an officer killed in the line of duty ought to be considered a tragedy. It's a tragedy for the officer who sacrificed his or her life. It's a tragedy for families and friends left behind. It's a tragedy for the community that lost a public servant, and it's a tragedy for all of us who rely on brave men and women to keep us safe. There's another disturbing trend that goes hand in hand with the rise in attack on police. We see more criminals resisting or fleeing arrest, more disrespect and demonizing of law enforcement, and a general atmosphere of hostility towards the people in uniform who put their lives on the line to protect us. This is a growing crisis, and there much that Congress needs to do to help address it. Senator Durbin talked about a bill he's putting in. I would raise one of the challenges in legislation that I'm introducing, a lack of data that backs up how bad this problem really is. While the government collects basic data on attack against police that result in serious injury or death, we don't have much data on contributing factors. We also don't have good data on attacks against police that don't result in death or serious injury. For this reason, I introduced a bill that I entitled Improving Law Enforcement Officer Safety and Wellness Through Data Act. This bill will help expand our understanding of these attacks to better identify motives, identify trends, and any coordinated efforts to target those officers who put on the badge to keep our country safe. I worked with police groups, including Major County Sheriff's Association, the National Association of Police Officers, to identify gaps in reporting. Senators Lujan, Tillis, Hassan, and Cassidy are original co-sponsors of this bipartisan bill. There are several bills proposed by members of this committee that would make it a federal crime to attack law enforcement, and that would enhance penalties to do so. Senators Cornyn, Tillis, and Cotton have sponsored those bills. A main cause of this violence against police is the demonization and the disrespect shown to the profession of law enforcement throughout the country. When you allow hatred of a group to spread, people find it easy to justify violent attacks against law enforcement. Kathy Smith, the wife of the late Sergeant Smith that I've already spoken about, sent us a letter that I'd like to introduce into the record. She tells us about what a wonderful and self-serving man Sergeant Smith was, but also that over the past 6 to 8 years, he told her that officers have been treated with more hostility. She writes that during the riots, quote, "My husband stood with his tactical team protecting the state capitol in Iowa and had frozen water bottles and rocks thrown at them. Protesters spit and insulted them for hours at a time," end quote. I held a roundtable a couple months ago with Iowa law enforcement in Davenport, Iowa. And one theme that I heard constantly is that officers' recruitment and retention is a major problem. There aren't enough police officers to go around. There's not enough young people joining the profession. Most new hires they're seeing come from other law enforcement offices. So one department gains a person, another department loses a person. The question that comes up is how we can ask young people to join the profession if we don't take care of them. How can we ask them to protect us if we don't protect them? And if we don't have enough officers, we can only expect to see other violent crimes get worse and worse. Kathy Smith's message to us here today is this, quote, "You can allow culture's diminishing respect and police lack of protection to continue down this dark path, permitting more families to face the same shattered fate as ours, or you can do something about it. You can listen to the problems we have, develop a plan to fix them, and save the lives of our officers," end of Kathy's quote. I agree with Kathy, and I hope this hearing will help to examine all aspects of this crisis for police and how we can help protect them. Before I close, I'd like to introduce into the committee a letter from the National Association of Police Organizations and also a statement from the Fraternal Order of Police, which states that anti-police rhetoric amplified by social media platforms leads to brazen acts of violence against them. I thank all of our witnesses for testifying. Thank you.